Great, thank you. And I appreciate Dr. Malsa talking about motorcycle riding technique because he, in turn, is helping me understand the learning techniques of our students, and it's opening windows in my mind as well. So I appreciate that. The question is interesting. It's the idea of death, but then it says, and different ways of implementing this idea by subcultures in daily life. And I think that motorcycling is a little bit simpler. We aren't really implementing the idea of death. It is inherent in that the motorcycle by itself is not stable. If you leave it alone, it's not on a kickstand or leaning against a wall or other support, it falls over. So it is telling you just right away by looking at it, I am not stable. I am not a safe machine, and only you, the operator, can make me safe or worse. If you left the motorcycle alone, it would not hurt anyone. If you handle it well, it will not hurt anyone. If you handle it poorly, it will hurt you and kill you. So the idea of death is built into the motorcycle, and I think that everybody who approaches it understands it, except possibly for those of us who started riding very young. Death was not part of our mentality. So I think that Simon can speak to this really well because he's been around it and studied it. I have certainly had it on my mind for decades, simply because I've had friends who die, and I ride motorcycles at all speeds and in all areas, and it is on my mind. So I think that as we age in the sport of motorcycling or the industry of motorcycling, death becomes something we think about a little more often. At the Champions School, we can speak directly to this risk, and we do speak directly to this risk by attempting to develop technical riders instead of emotional riders. An emotional rider would say, I hope I don't crash today. I hope I don't die on my motorcycle today. It's a very good hope. It's a good strong hope. But a technical rider will be so focused on what they are doing on the motorcycle, the gear they wear, the preparation of the motorcycle, but the inputs they make on the motorcycle, that the death will take a very distant back seat. And I think that Simon has seen this in the best of the Isle of Man racers, where they are so focused on putting the bike in the exact right location for the exact right corner, doing the right inputs. All those things are far, far above the idea of this could kill me. That's an emotional thought, and those people would not be on the motorcycles if they were not technical. We try to build technical riders and skirt this idea of death. I'll tell you that the idea of death is a direct influencer to those who decide to ride a motorcycle. And I can tell you that because we've had quite a few students in the last year, when they introduce themselves, they go, yeah, my name is Sarah, and I'm riding a motorcycle because of COVID. And Sarah realized that she could catch a life-threatening disease at the grocery store if somebody sneezed on her, and she decided, what the heck, if I can die in the grocery store, I'm going to fulfill this lifelong dream of mine, and that is to pilot a motorcycle, a freedom machine. And we've had at least a handful of students tell me that personally. I'm riding because of COVID. I started riding because of COVID. I think that's pretty cool. Our subculture and death were not inherently tied, because the steam engine that they attached to a bicycle back in 1876, the steam engine that they attached to the motorcycle was basically not really, you couldn't really ride this motorcycle, quote unquote, couldn't be much faster than a bicycle. 12 miles an hour was an amazing steam engine motorcycle speed, but everybody, the death thing started to become a bigger thing, because in 1924, we were over 100 miles an hour on motorcycles. In 1937, the top speed was over 136 miles an hour on a motorcycle, definitely speed you can die at. Nowadays, production motorcycles that your 16-year-old son or daughter can buy in America off the showroom floor will go over 200 miles an hour. And there was a gentleman's agreement that they would be limited to 186 miles an hour, but that agreement is being forgotten now. So you can go buy a 200-mile-an-hour motorcycle off the production, off the floor. And I think the top speed, land speed record on two wheels, motorcycle, streamline motorcycle, is a 360-mile-an-hour mark. So all of a sudden, not all of a sudden, but over time, death has lured its head, and it gets us into that idea that a technical rider focused on not making mistakes becomes a very good long-term rider. An emotional rider with no training, which is what Dr. Malsev and I are really focused on, the proper training and the proper way to reduce the chance of death and get them focused on techniques. Pretty neat. Everyone who has a motorcycle, especially a street bike in my world of enthusiast street bike riding, has been regaled by their neighbors about how their brother died on a motorcycle. Every ambulance driver they meet tells them about a motorcycle crash. Every doctor they meet tells them about a motorcycle crash. And we somehow work through those stories and the YouTube videos that show people crashing. We ignore the 4,900 riders that have died on average over the last 5 years. And I wrote down the reasons that, in my opinion, on why we continue to ride a motorcycle. Why would we do this in the face of obvious possibility of death and dismemberment? One, we could simply count on fate, luck. We ignore reality. We blissfully get on our motorcycles thinking it will not happen to me. Number two, we count on riding skill. We believe that someone who was in a crash and was killed was because they were a poor rider. We are a good rider. We've decided not to ride drunk. Almost 50% of crashes in America are drunk motorcycle riders. Well, we decide we won't ride drunk. I should be fine. We count on good gear. We put on the jackets, the pants, the helmet, the gloves, the boots. We put their bright colors. It's called conspicuity. We are brightly colored. We ride with our headlights on. We have all the best gear. We have airbags in our jackets now. If we want to put an airbag in our jacket, we think we're going to be fine because we ride with the best gear. Next reason, we count on technology. We believe we're buying a motorcycle that has anti-lock braking. It has traction control. It has wheelie control. It has power modes. I can turn down the power in the rain. I should be fine. This should be fine. I'll be fine. I won't be the rider that crashes because my bike is so good. But all these risks, all the risks that we take, we decide are worth the reward. The reward of certainly racing after a Sunday night when you're sitting with your crew and you've had a good race, maybe you've got the big trophy, you're sitting there and there's nothing that can replace that in my life. Bob Hanna, a motocross world and national champion, he said the only thing better than motorcycle racing was airplane racing. And most of us cannot afford to race an airplane, but we can afford to race a motorcycle. So even though we've seen the crash bikes, we've maybe even crashed them ourselves, myself and our instructors. My instructors have crashed motorcycles, yet we keep doing it, because we have all these reasons that we can do it. But for us, number one thing is we rely on increasing our skill to match the motorcycle. I'm going to finish up here. My passion is very simple. There's nothing I've experienced in my life as satisfying as riding a motorcycle, especially at speed. We can grow our subculture of motorcycling, but not with the current baseline instruction for new riders in America. It is woefully inadequate for the speeds at which they can ride when they buy a motorcycle off the showroom floor. So our subculture could grow if we improve riding technique based on what new riders are hearing. Here's the deal. Death is a natural progression of mistakes we make on a motorcycle. Death becomes a very real idea to the rider, the untrained rider, or the poorly trained rider that crosses the center line on their motorcycle. There's no oncoming traffic, so they are not killed, but they cross the center line. They pull over, and in their mind is, I could have died. Death is at the top of their mind, and they decide, I will not ride because it could kill me. We can change that with improved riding technique. Thanks.